Good morning, or good afternoon at this point. Thank you for joining us for today's session. So today's session will be covering the CPCSC Level 2. So we're going beyond the basics, beyond Level 1. On our agenda today, we have a brief introduction. We'll talk a bit about controlled information, the CPCSC overview, and then we'll delve into Level 2 requirements, what you can do to get ready. We'll talk about how we can help, and then we'll have a question and answer session at the end. So we ask that you keep your questions till the end, and then you can unmute yourself, or you can type your questions into the chat box. Just for your information, this session is being recorded and we'll be providing the recording and slides by the end of today or early next week. So before we begin, would like to let you know that the information presented in this presentation is for educational purposes only. We're not affiliated with the Government of Canada. So this is an official guidance from the Government of Canada. So if you need official and up-to-date information, you need to consult the official CPCSC site. So our speakers today are myself, and we have Mirat and Sushant, both of whom are very knowledgeable in the CPCSC program, and will be providing in-depth information today, and we'll be able to answer any questions you may have at the end of the session. I'm going to pass it over to Mirat, who will begin talking about controlled information.
Thanks, Deborah. Happy Friday, everyone. So as Deborah mentioned, if you want to keep track of your questions, you can wait till the end, or, depending on the topic, you may want to just chime in. Like Deborah will monitor the chat as well, so you can put them in and then we can sort of cover it, right? So today we're going to be focusing on Level 2. We have done a Level 1 session probably 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, or sometime before, right? So overall, what is CI, right? Because it's all about CI. The definition matters a lot, right? So if you look at the US model, it's different than what in the GC we are using. There are a lot of similarities. Overall, we're looking at government information that in this particular context, defense contractors are going to be utilizing, right? So what is CI? CI is any sensitive or government or defense related information, data that requires protection, right? And then if you have been in federal government circles, you're going to recognize these labels, PA, PB, PC, protected A, B, and C. Overall, this is for the information that any defense contractor that's going to be processing this info, right? That CPCSC is designed for, right? So you're probably going to see more PA and PB data than PC, right? So protected C is less, right? So if we look at the overall deployment, it's going to be mainly a mix of, I will say, 65% protected A, 35% protected B. Those are the numbers that I just made up. So, but overall, it's going to be mainly PB data, right? PC is going to be still going to be there, but the number may not be as high overall from a defense contracting perspective. Next slide, please. So what is the CPCSC, right? So I know it's tough it really rolls off the tongue, right? So CPCSC is Canadian Program for Cybersecurity Certification. Say it 5 times, and you can put it on your resume, right? So the same requirement, is similar to what US has done, right? So US has a certification program called CMMC, Cybersecurity Mature Model Certification. They are definitely ahead on the journey for their certification progress, right? But in a nutshell, what it is for enough defense contractors, CPCSC is going to be enforcing that defense contractors actually adheres to some of the security requirements, right? And then what CSC has done is they have generated a document called, excuse me, ITSP 10171, which is derived from NIST SP 800-171 revision 3, right? So if you look at the two programs, CMMC is based on Rev 2, right, of 800-171. Canada made the decision to go to Rev 3, which makes sense because there's a huge difference between Rev 2 and 3, right? And then overall, this applies to any defense suppliers on on contracts that has sensitive or classified info, right? Now, these are not new programs, especially CMMC, right? As CPCSC has been in the works for a while, the original intention was mutual recognition. But with the current geopolitical situation, I don't think that mutual recognition is going to happen, right? But that's sort of the intention. The other technical problem is, even if you want to, the current CMMC certification regime is based on Rev 2, right? SP 800-171 Rev 2. Canada uses Rev 3. I think CMMC is probably going to take like another 18 months or maybe longer to get there so that they start using it, because you need to keep in mind that these are big machinery. So, if you want to turn left, you have to say it like a couple months ago so the machine can turn, right? And it's huge as well, right? Like if we're looking at, you look at what the impact is. If you're a defense contractor and you're not meeting a requirement, you may not actually be eligible to get the contract, right? So you may not, chances are it's not going to be enforced at first, right? It's going to be, once you qualify, before you can be awarded the contract, you need to meet these requirements, but that may delay your time to market, right? If it takes you 18 months to start a contract, that's a lot of revenue lost, right? Later on, once this thing matures, my estimate is like 5 to 10 years, you may actually see these things as requirements in the contracts, right? So, you must meet this, right? Or the window might be shrinking, right? Like they may say, you got to get this thing done in 3 months, 6 months, whatever. The biggest difference, like especially if you look at the, Canada or US context, is we always have security requirements. The biggest difference with certification is now Canada and US is enforcing, saying that you need to go to a third party, right? And then that party I can't talk. That third party assesses you based on the established security controls, right? So it's almost like you're going and getting ISO 27001 or SOC 2 report, right? It's not just you saying, hey, I'm good. Now you need to go to a third party and they assess you based on ITSP 100, 171, and 172, and then you go from there. Next slide, please. So what are the levels, right? And like, I know Deborah mentioned the disclaimer slide, so we do not represent Government of Canada. We are knowledgeable in this field, but your current source of information for the program is the actual CPCSC website. Because keep in mind, things may change, right? They're still in early stages, right? So the level that you're going to be looking at is going to be different, right? So you have 3 levels: foundational, advanced, and expert. So level 3, which is similar in the US, is going to be done by DND themselves, right? So level 2 is going to be done by a third party, right? And then that's where you actually need to work with in US it's called 3PAO, or third party authorized organization. Canada is looking at doing a similar thing, and then we'll see where that goes, right? Next one. So what's the timeline? Now, this timeline slide is a little dated, right? So this is coming from the CPCSC website. So you can see that, like March 2025, there's the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. So phase 2, which is where we are right now, government was saying that we'll go through some level 1 certification through self-assessment. There's still a lot of unknowns, because if you're a defense contractor and you're doing an assessment in the US, you send it through a central system called SPURS, right? In Canada, we don't have that system yet. So there's a lot of unknowns on the program maturity or program implementation perspective. So we'll see how that works. My guesstimate is this timeline is probably going to shift. I will say 3 to 6 months to the right. But we'll see. The other thing that in the US, what they have done is, excuse me, is that they have done some joint sessions, right? So DoD in that case actually will attend some of the level 2 sessions, and they've done some joint surveillance activities, right? Assessments. Canada may elect to do something similar, but we'll see. Overall, like this timeline slide is sort of telling you it's coming, right? And then the big thing there is you can't just do a boot camp on the weekend and then say, hey, I'm CPCSC certified, right, on Monday. So I think the big message you may want to get out of the session, if nothing, is it takes a while, right? And anyone has done any security assessment work and remediation work knows that it takes a while. It's the numbers game too, right? Like the 171, I think it's about 110 controls. And it's going to depend on the evidence, right? Like you may take the example of MFA, right? You may do MFA, but you need to show that, hey, you have a policy, you have implemented it, and here's what is in play, right? I think the next one is Sushant's, right?
Yeah, I will take that. So thank you so much, Murad. In continuation to what Murad just said, this is not a weekend boot camp which you can attain and then complete your CPCSC certification. This goes beyond something which we can imagine when we talk about basic cybersecurity. Now, many people try to think of this access control and these domains which are mentioned over here. These are all CPCSC domains. There are almost 17 domains of cybersecurity implementations. Now we will go with these domains one by one, but I would like to start with some basic questions. If tomorrow, if we ask any organization about their access control, what evidence they can produce is the crux of this whole CPCSC program. If they are in just position to produce the evidence of the list of account holders, that's not sufficient. Now, when we talk about when we talk about CPCSC level 2, this goes beyond the requirements of level 1. Level 1, you can only comply with 6 domains and you are good to go. But access control being a domain in both levels, I will go over access control in depth. So level 2 certification is a structured and externally validated cybersecurity controls put in place, and those are grouped together. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity, many people will say that we have a security awareness training program which is going on a quarterly basis, and we are good, cybersecurity is good, but that's not how it works. When we talk about access control, we have to address, does the right people have access? Are they using right devices? Are they getting into the systems which they should get into? So this is not only about having a secure password. Access control goes beyond that and talks about, do you have policy, which talks about how you are processing onboarding? Do you have policy which talks about how you are processing offboarding? So you can see how this IT security is getting merged with the HR operations. So that's where we say that this is a long-term journey. We have to think of our operations from the CPCSC lens and then start implementing these controls. Moving on to next domain, which is access awareness and training. Now, here in this domain, it is about whether every staff member knows what they should be following in the cybersecurity realm. What type of sharings are allowed, what type of sharings are not allowed, how to identify which data has to be protected at what extent. All these are part of awareness and training. This is going beyond phishing awareness training. Please mind that. Moving on to the next domain, in audit and accountability, we talk about system logs. Are we collecting logs of activities? Can we trace back any kind of incident to individuals? That's the crux of this audit and accountability. Every actionable item has to be maintained in a log format. Once I go over all these domains, I'm going to open NIST 800-171 for those who are interested in looking at from the NIST perspective. And I do have a document ITSP 10-171 as well with me. And we will look into that domain as well. When we talk about configuration management, here we will be talking about all these systems. Are they getting patched regularly? Are they getting updated regularly? Do you have any out of date software in your digital realm? Do you have any particular device which is legacy device, such as Windows XP? The device is running on Windows XP for which the support has been discontinued quite a long back ago. So how that patch management is happening, how that these devices are being protected on the side of using compensating controls. Moving on to identification and authentication. Now, in this domain, we will be focusing on verifying each individual. There should not be any incident where the weak password which got stolen over some or the other cyber attack and being utilized in your same infrastructure without any multi-factor authentication. So authorization, here we will be talking about whether they have a two-factor authentication enabled, are they using any shared account, can we trace back which individual took the activity or conducted the activity, and all these controls or domains of controls are going to be addressed. Now let us go over our documents which are ITSP 10171, and we will look at the access control and we will try to see what that document expect us to follow. I will try sharing my screen and let me know if you can see the screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for the confirmation. So let's look at the index first. This is like around 100-page document, 100-page long document. And when we look at access control, we have these many access control is a domain, and under requirements, access control is a domain, and these are the controls. Let's look at access management. Here you will see what is to be performed. Every statement what you are going to see here will be in the past perfect tense. Define types of system accounts allowed and prohibited. For each assessment objectives, which is represented by alphabets here up to G, each assessment objective has to be met in order to say that we are meeting the control requirement of 3.1.1. Here you can see this is not just asking you about the list of users. This is asking us about authorized users on the system, how you are grouping them together, what role are they coming from, what type of authorization they have, what privileges they bring to the account, what is there any privilege creep to the account, are you using are you using and monitoring the system accounts? Now, system accounts can be the automated backups which are being performed on the system credentials. Are you disabling the accounts, system accounts which are not required? And this also often comes around the databases. Like database has got a system account which can be utilized to manipulate the database or or change the database. This is like very minute implementation statements, notify account manager and designated personals roles within. And here, whatever you are seeing in the bracket, this is because the ITSP 10171 is following NIST 800-171 version 3. In version, what is the difference between version 2, which is current standard document for CMMC compliance, and version 3 or revision 3 is organizational defined parameters. Now, every organization will have a flexibility to define their parameters based on their security requirements. This is like organization defined time period. Now here it can be quarterly, it can be monthly, it can be biannually, depending on your complexity of the network. If we try looking at, let me go to the index page again, and we will first we'll go to NIST 800-171. This is revision 2. Here same control. In this control 3.1.1, we are able to see that it says limit system access to authorized users, processes, acting on behalf of authorized users and devices, including other systems. And each control is divided into assessment objectives as well. I'm just going to find assessment objectives here. which I cannot. Anyway, let us go back. Sorry.
This is not the A document, right? Like this is
not the assessment objectives.
So there's two documents, right? There's the main document, right? Like, you know, SB 800 171, and there's going to be an A document, which is the assessment document that actually spells out the assessment objects and everything else. What Sushant was showing was the actual controls, and then the A document, which is the one he's showing on screen, is going to, you know, show you more information, right?
So here you can see that this access control requirement has been expanded into almost 6 assessment objectives, and each assessment objective is specifying what has to be done. Authorized users are identified. So not only the list of users, but all users with their roles, groups, everything has to be mentioned. Now, moving back to our slideshow, I'll stop sharing the screen and we will go over to next group of domains. Next slide, please. Deborah, can you share the slide?
Sure.
Yeah, like while Deborah is changing the slide, so the document that, you know, Sushant was showing you the actual 171 and 171A, which is the assessment, right, guide that actually says, here's what's happening. In Canada, we only have SP, you know, 10171. There's no A document. The guidance document is not there. It's in the works. But the guidance document is going to be, it's going to make things more clear in terms of, you know, what do you, because part of the challenge of these things is, you know, it's open to interpretation, right? But when you actually have the assessment guide, it sort of makes it, you know, crystal clear, right? That there's no judgment call. Sorry, Sushant, go ahead.
Thank you. So going on to next bunch of domains now, incident response, maintenance, media protection, and personal security. Now, let me just elaborate this each domain in depth, and then we can have some good conversation around like how are you currently maintaining your infrastructure and what type of questions you might have, or let's say media protection or maintenance. And feel free to use chat window to type in your query, and we will be able to answer those questions at the end. In incident response, it is in cybersecurity, it is said that it is not if, it is when. So you never know when there might be an attack happening on your infrastructure. So in case of ongoing attack, do we have documented plans to respond to those incidents or attacks? This means talking about clear steps that we will take for detection of the incident or attack, reporting, and how we can mitigate that, and how we can recover our whole infrastructure back to our original state, because this danger is in the biggest danger is in breach. If there is any data being stolen from your infrastructure, which is under PA or PB or PC category, that comes as a business risk to the organization. That's why incident response has to be clearly defined. Like we have to have a good plans in place for addressing the requirements under incident response domain. Moving on to the next domain, which is maintenance. In maintenance, it is more of systems being regularly maintained to understand whether there is any vulnerability arising in the device, in the platform, in the software. Are you currently using any open source libraries? If you are running any open source library or integrating your product with some open source libraries, are there any vulnerabilities being disclosed on the market in the NVD? Those has to be tracked under the maintenance. It is not only about maintaining the hardware, it is also maintaining the vulnerabilities in the software in the platform. Media protection, very interesting. Many infrastructures are still reliant on USB medias and the portable hard drives and the laptops which you can carry anywhere, the devices which hold some sensitive data. It can be your mobile device as well. All these things are to be considered under the scope of media protection. Now, what we need to do is, one, any removable media or any media which has the ability to go outside your infrastructure must be secured. Not only secured, because securing is in umbrella term. We have to talk about specifics like encryption. What encryption are we using over here? Do we have any two-factor authentication to make sure that the person who is accessing that media is the right person to access that media? Moving on to personal security. Now, this is all about how you are managing your onboarding, offboarding. Do you have clear documented onboarding procedure? Onboarding as well as offboarding is important because the deprovisioning holds a lot more weightage in personal security when any employee is being terminated. If they have access to any critical data from your organization, that has to be first taken care of, and then we can say that personal security is also being addressed in this level 2 requirement. Next slide, please. Can we go back to the earlier slide, please, once? When we talk about this maintenance and incident response, what questions comes to your mind? How you are currently addressing or approaching this compliance requirement with having this in mind? Any questions? If you have, please feel free to use chat window. Next slide, please. Moving on to the next bunch of domains, physical protection, because this physical protection talks about locks, badges, your physical perimeter, how you are monitoring your infrastructure using CCTV or any other cameras. Are there any unauthorized hands touching your sensitive information? Who is coming into the infrastructure and accessing that infrastructure which they should, or getting into the walls where they should not be present? That's where we talk about physical protection. It has to be justified with using all requirements stated in the ITSP 10.171 document. And this surveillance, what we are talking about here, is also again fueling back to the audit and accountability purposes. In risk assessment, as you know, that cyber threats change daily. Due to this LLM and the evolutions happening on the AI side, we are seeing many risks popping up now. How you are evaluating risks for your infrastructure on a regular basis is the process in risk assessment. Moving on to the next domain, which is security assessment. Security assessment is, despite of having all these controls in place, are you testing those controls for their effectiveness? Do we have onboarding mechanism to see whether these safeguards are actually working and alerting you or your infrastructure managers when these controls are failing? Is there any gap in detection? All these things will fall under security assessment and monitoring. And next domain is about system communication and protection. Here we will be talking more about how information is flowing in your infrastructure. If the information which is flowing through, is it getting blocked or is it getting intercepted by any eavesdropping attack? Can man-in-the-middle attack work on this system data flow diagrams? These questions are to be addressed in system and communication. Next slide, please. And this is our last slide, which talks about remaining 4 domains. And I'll go over them one by one, and then we will spare some time on ITSP to look at these requirements. And yeah, that's how we should be going. The system and information integrity. This is a combination of how you are protecting your endpoints. Are you patching your endpoints on a regular basis? Are you maintaining the integrity of the data which is being hosted on your infrastructure? Do you have any integrity checks in place? What if somebody is changing the data in the back end and nobody is getting to know about it? all these controls are to be kept. Like when I'll have to justify this with the example, if any sensitive information is being kept on your device, will you be notified when that file or that information changes? Is there any mechanism to track that back? Moving on to planning, as you can see, we are talking about like almost 16, 17 domains, and each domain consists of around, like the rough estimation, bare minimum 5 controls up to 10, 15 controls in one domain. We need to plan this program. So this becomes a cybersecurity program all of a sudden. Now, how we are going to maintain our system security plans? How are we maintaining our response plans? How are we maintaining our POAMs, the plan of action and milestones? All these things comes under the planning domain. And the second last domain is system and services acquisition. When you're buying any new system, are you putting enough checks on the vendor? Are you putting enough checks on the device which you are procuring? Are you considering the security aspects and the sensitivity of that device, or the protection levels of that device impacting your sensitivity of your data? That's considered under the system and services acquisition. If you are utilizing any SaaS platform, if you are using, let's say, Slack, have you looked at the Slack vulnerabilities on the back end? Are you protecting yourself, or are you securing yourself from all those vulnerabilities? That's the crux of this domain. And last domain is about supply chain risk management. As we move towards whole connected world, the supply chain is becoming a critical component of this defense industrial base, because the whole CMMC program or CPCSC program is about supply chain, right? Now, here in this domain, the most critical thing what we need to understand is you are only as strong as your weakest supplier. If one supplier has got no security in place and then they are supplying to you, you are inheriting some of their risks and their vulnerabilities in your infrastructure. So do you have a formal mechanism to actively identify, address any risks which are coming in from partners, coming in from vendors? Are you going through the background checks and understanding whether these organizations are in good standing? Are they affiliated with any other organization which is not good for our nation? That's what we will be addressing. As promised, we will go back to our document.itsp. We will review that, and it will be it will be more of a scheming. But if you have any questions related to this, feel free to drop it in the conversation chat. I'll share my screen. I see some questions coming in chat. We will address them shortly. Okay. Murat, any choice which domain we should be jumping into? Any preference?
No, you go. You'll find your favorite.
Let's go with the media protection, because this is easy to understand and helps us to focus on a short domain. Here in this media protection domain, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 9. If I remove unallocated or not allocated, 7. Let us go over this media transport. Protect and control media system which may contain or that contains CI during the transport outside your controlled areas. So what is the meaning of controlled areas for us? Is your scope, is your infrastructure boundary. If that device is going to go outside, how are we maintaining that, protecting that? How are we maintaining the accountability for that system media, for that USB drive? Do we have activities, documented activities for transportation? Now, question to attendees here: how many of us are maintaining these logs? And my rough estimation is very few. because we have not looked at media protection from this angle many a times in past, and that just increases our cost of operations. New processes being integrated in our operations. If media marking is pretty much common, like there has to be a media marked with CI categories, and distribution should be limited. Handling caveats should be addressed. Here's the interesting thing again, media sanitization. I don't know about all, but I can speak for myself. Not every time I feel excited to go and sanitize the media. All I use is Control Shift Delete, which gives me the sense of media data getting removed. But that's not the way the NIST documents or ITSP 10171 documents are suggesting us. There is a proper mechanism which is in place and which is a suggestion for us to sanitize the media. And as you can see, all publications which are related to this control are mentioned over here in this document. Right? And that brings us to almost a conclusion. Over to you, Murad.
Thanks, Prashant. Like one of the key things, like I know like the screen was going fast, but the supply chain like is a big difference between Rev 2 and Rev 3, right? Because like if you look at the current reality of the world we live in, is like we have a lot of suppliers, whether that's SaaS, PaaS, right? Especially SaaS providers, which also has some their own suppliers or subcontractors. It becomes a quite complicated world, right? So that's why I think there's going to be more focus on that, right? Like if we look at US, they start doing things like, SBOM and stuff like that. So just to highlight what's happening, right? So, and if you really, if you have trouble going to sleep, I highly recommend reading, SB 800-171 or the Canadian version, SB 10-171. It definitely cures it. Like by page 35, I think you'll be okay, right? So, just joking, but these are dry documents to go through, right? That's why the assessment guide, like the A series, is really helpful because it's sort of I always make the joke with friends saying, okay, it's not in English, right? Because you read the control, you're like, maybe I need more coffee, right? That's why the assessment guide on the US side, like that will have the Canadian version soon, definitely helps. So at least you know what you're looking at. Now, we talked a lot about here's what it is, what's happening, but what can you do, right? So if you're a defense contractor or you're a consultant, the key thing is understanding requirements, right? Like I highly recommend read, ITSB 10-171. You can look at the assessment guide for SB 800-171A, right? Because that's like the technical controls are not going to change. The legal framework and constructs are different, right? But other than that, the technical control, MFA is MFA, right? Whether it's Canadian or US, it's not going to change. So I highly suggest like reading, SB 800-171A document, because that's going to tell you, okay, how am I going to assess this, right? Both documents. That's the other cool thing with NIST documentation is they have more funding compared to Canadian government, so there's more stuff there and it's better quality, right? The other thing that you may want to do is you may want to do a self-assessment, right? Like now you know what the controls are, you can say, how am I doing, right? And it doesn't need to be detailed. Like you can just say, I'm going to go from a level 1 to 4, level 1 being not awesome, level 4 being uber awesome. Then you can say, okay, where are my gaps, right? Now, step 3 is once you identify what the gaps are, you try to deploy those security controls, right? So security is a journey, right? Like it doesn't stop because there's always something new happening, right? And at some point, when Skynet happens, I think this is going to be game over. But until that time, we got to sort of do our own thing, right? The other thing is keep in mind, it's got to be third-party certification, right? Meaning that it's not just you saying that I'm good. You need to prove it to an auditor to say, we're good, right? So you may want to start compiling your evidence, right? How do you do account creation? How do I enforce things? What's the screen capture? Like, you can do a video like Loom or anything else. And then step 5 is you can actually, get a certified external assessor like ourselves, and then do a formal level 2 certification, right? So I will say the key thing is you've got to familiarize yourself with, with the actual controls, what they mean, what's the essence, right? Why they are going there, right? Next slide, please. So like, how can we help, right? This is our sales pitch, right? So like we can actually help you to look at from a compliance coaching and documentation support. Like we can identify where you're lacking, what documentation you may want to generate. We can also do like a quick assessment of where you guys fit in, right, in the organization. We can also do an external assessment, right, if that's where you want to do. We can do ongoing advisor support. And then the final thing is IT staff training. Like I'll look at it as more of a coaching because we want to teach you how to catch fish, right, as opposed to giving you the fish. So to me, it's a matter of you got to build that capability within your organization so you can actually be self-sufficient on your own, right? Because this is a long-term journey. The cycle in US is 3 years. So every 3 years, you got to be reassessed, right? And if you've been in IT, you blink your eyes and then 6 months pass, right? So it's a continuous thing. So the sooner, you sort of understand what AC-2 is, right? It's an inside joke. It's much better. I think over to you after this one, Deborah.
Okay, that concludes our session for today. So some resources you might find helpful, like Shashank and Mira mentioned, the ITSP 10171, the NIST SP 800-171 revision 3, and also the A document. So I will be sending these out at some point next week. So now we'll move on to our question and answer session. We have some questions in the chat box. I don't know if you guys want to respond, typing back or with your mics. Also, if you have any questions and you'd like to speak, you can raise your hands up and I will unmute your mic.
Yeah, so I'll take the first one. So Boris is asking USB device monitoring. So like that's under, like probably under SC family, probably SC12, right? So that's going to be covered. So that's the USB hardware keylogger. Luis has a question.
Mohammed has a question. You should be able to unmute your mic now.
Yeah, so while we wait for Mohammed, so Luis is asking, do I need to be CPCSC certified too? So that's why we have this big disclaimer that say the program is still evolving, right? In US, like you actually need to get it, like there's a certification process and there's actually certified training partners. There is certified, like for you to generate any material, you need to be part of the system. In Canada, we're not there yet, right? Like it's still early on. And that's one of the gaps we're seeing. Like in the US, it's a program, it's an ecosystem that says, here's what it is. Like if you look at US, they create a separate organization called Cyber AB, right? In Canada, we decided to use Standard Council of Canada, which, to be fair, cyber is not their thing, right? So that's the main difference. I'm hoping I answered your question, Luis. Mohammed, you're having mic problems. If that's the case, you may want to put your question.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks for this webinar. Really appreciate it. I have a question now. First of all, when we talk about level 2, it looks like, as you guys mentioned, it's a very fairly comprehensive system, and it makes me wonder if this actually applies to individual consultants or if it talks about like maybe agencies that write, let's say, contracts directly with the DND. The reason I'm saying that is, let's say as a DND consultant, you have all the security controls. They should be inherent by by the DND, meaning you access the DND's laptops. They are the ones who handle your user accounts. You don't bring your own device to processing any of the data or to do any of that stuff for that matter, even if you were to work remotely. The only thing that could come to my mind where the burden could be on the individual contractor is maybe possibly the physical security of their, let's say, their office. Like, if you're working from home, something similar to what is being enforced for controlled goods if you happen to process controlled goods at home. So my question is, would these actually apply to us individual consultants? Because if so, I mean, it just sounds, or it appears to me that they are trying maybe to offload the security controls and responsibilities to the service provider rather than the department itself. I cannot see that this is a proper philosophy. Over.
Sean, do you want to take a crack, or do you want me to take a crack?
I think you can go ahead, Burak.
Yeah, so like think of it why that's happening, right? Like in the US, if you look at any of the CMMC presentations, they're going to show the latest, US jet fighter, and China has the exact same thing, like surprisingly. So it applies to like if you're doing manufacturing, right? Like if you're a defense contractor, you're utilizing your own IT and doing things, right? So if you're utilizing DND equipment, then it's under DND control. The reason this program's generated is in the US DoD and here DND heavily relies on private companies to do some of their defense work, right? And then those companies utilize their own equipment, own IT, and everything else. So these controls are supposed to apply to those entities, right? So if you're utilizing DND issued laptop, like that's not gonna change anything, right? But let's say you're as part of shipbuilding, you're actually manufacturing a small part that goes on the ship, right? In your shop in Burlington, right? Then it's going to apply to you because you're actually doing something for DND, right? Does that answer your question, Mohammed?
So I think basically summarized, if you're, let's say, a regular consultant, providing IT consultancy and cybersecurity to like the government, using their own equipment, probably by worst case scenario, we might just have to satisfy level 1, if anything, but nothing more than that.
Yeah, so think of it as not people, think of it as entities, right? So it's going to be the actual organization who's actually delivering that service. So it won't be like Murat or Sushant or Mohammed, right? It's going to be like MDOS in this case that will be going for this, and then we may employ other people, right? But it's going to be, again, it goes back to if you're using your own IT to process, controlled information, right? Like that's the main thing. So if you're a regular consultant doing a regular GC thing, I don't see it impacting you. Like that's not the model US has. I think Canada will probably follow the same thing. Anything you want to add, Sushant?
Yeah, so when I was having a similar conversation in the context of CMMC, the same thing popped up. Government facilitated equipment, GFEs, are out of scope for CMMC requirement. And I see that in a reciprocal manner, that same thing happening to CPCSC as well. If you are being provided with any device, anyway, we have a less control on that device and less ownership on that device. So the security of that device or that data is government's responsibility because they are providing it, and we have to follow their rules and the controls which they have in place. When it comes to individuals, we have to focus or when it comes to organizations who are supporting DND or who are supporting Prime, that's where the CPCSC will get activated. If you are supporting them through your entity has to comply. These are not CPCSC and CPCSC, CMMC are not individual requirements. These are organizational requirements. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
I know it's Friday, but feel free to ask any question. We can give you some good stock tips, you can do investing with. Oh, so we don't know yet, right? Like the program is not there. Louise asked, like, what are the costs of getting a cert, level 2 cert? So the program is still early, so we just don't know what they will be, right? In US, if you're looking for level 2, your costs are looking depending. It's all about scope, right? So if you're General Dynamics versus a small shop in Burlington doing one gadget, your assessment is going to be depending on the scope. So I have seen costs from 40,000 US to 125 US thousand, right? So it all depends what's in scope, but in Canada, like the program, it's still early, right? So it hasn't settled yet. So it will settle at some point, but it's gonna depend on what control information that the company is processing, right? There could be a big difference.
Yeah, and it also depends on like where we are starting. If we have CMMC and then going for CPCSC, then we are already 85% compliant. Then CPCSC is the delta for us. That reduces the cost. If we are starting with the program for the first time, we do not even have policies, then we have a long way to go for the scope, as well as the tenure of the program can increase drastically if we are starting at very beginning.
Murat, are you responding to the question in the chat box?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Yes, going once, going twice.
But I really like this. This is really interactive. Enjoying the vibe, back and forth.
Okay, I think we can close the session there, Brett.
All right. Thank you for joining us. I will send out the recording, the link to the recording, as well as the slides by the end of today or early next week. If you have any questions, feel free to contact myself, Shashank, or Murat. Happy Friday and have a happy weekend.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Thanks a lot, folks.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you all.